college football playoff expanding to 12 teams, and we really need to talk about this in some level of detail so that everybody's on the good foot when we start playing football on August 24th, which seems like it's around the corner for some of y'all, but some of y'all ain't been doing college football in the offseason for the last, 5 months. That's been yours truly. All right. So number one here, the same 13-member college football playoff selection committee as we had last year. I don't think they're going to leave out an undefeated Florida State this year. Florida State should run the table, right? Because we got 12 teams here. But interestingly enough, they wouldn't be allowed to, because the ACC champ is probably going to get in, because the 5 highest ranked conference champions plus 7 highest ranked teams will make up the 12-team field. And there's no minimum ranking that is needed for a conference champion. I'll get to that in just a minute. But what this really means is that our Power 4 conferences, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC are all going to probably get their, will get their conference champions in. That's just how we're going to make the sport work, because, well, haves and have-nots is something that kind of becoming a trend. Well, it's not kind of becoming a trend. It's always been a trend in college football. We're just recognizing it for the first time in 2024. What I think is interesting about the 5 highest ranked conference champions and the 7 highest ranked after that is seeding. So just because you are a high ranked team does not mean you will have a high ranked seed, right? So ranking is not seeding. For the purposes of example, Ohio State plays Michigan in the Big 10 championship. Okay. Ohio State's ranked number 1. Michigan is ranked number 2. If Ohio State beats Michigan, the best that Michigan could hope for in a college football playoff would be number 5 in the seeding, because they would be ranked behind other conference champions. So conference championships absolutely positively matter, which is great, because it felt like some of the independents were getting the slide on actually having to put it on the line to play for a championship. In the college football playoff format is ensuring that if you play for a conference championship and you win, we're going to give you the credit for having won your league title. It also means that independents ain't going to be top 4 seeds, top 5 seeds. Ain't going to happen. People like Notre Dame in an open marriage with the ACC need to either get hitched or kick rocks. And best you could do is be one of those highest ranked 7 seeds, right? I'm sure Notre Dame is fine with this, because Notre Dame is always fine with this, because Notre Dame is cool about the open marriage thing. Kind of strange, given it's a Catholic school, but they're cool with it. So we're going to have to acknowledge that they're cool with it, along with other places that may be independent, so like Oregon State and Washington State, for the purposes of this discussion, as they're not really affiliated. They have the same open marriage with the Mountain West that the Notre Dame has with the ACC. Again, I think this is as it should be. You play in a conference, you should get the benefit of playing in that conference. And if you don't play in a conference, we're going to treat you like single life. That's what we do, right? Some of us, we get married. Some of y'all stay single and you want to be riding out there, but we're going to take it out of your taxes. This is Notre Dame's tax, right? Some of y'all understand this, some of y'all don't. All right. I also think it's important to point out that we're going to have a month of playoffs. I don't think this has really gotten hold to anybody yet, but we're going to start the playoffs on December 20th. It's Friday. We're going to play the national championship game on January 20th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That's really cool, because that means we got all the New Year's, all of Christmas to talk about college football actually being meaningful, as opposed to you kind of turn on your bowl game, you kind of don't. Just depends. Everybody tunes in for the national championship game, but I'm curious to see how this does for us as fans as we are watching these games play out both on television and, crucially, at home. Now, what's also interesting and cool about this is the buys are going to be awarded to those top seeds. We understand that, but we're going to have the first round played at homes of the higher seeds. So we're actually going to have skin in the game and really be playing for these bubble positions in November, that you could be hosting a college football playoff game in the first round if you are one of those middle seeds, right? This is also cool because Alabama's already planning for this. I don't know how to take this into account, but I'm just going to lay this out here. Alabama's spring game was played on a field that looked crappy. And the reason the field looked crappy is because they're refreshing the field so that the field is in condition to be played on should they host a first round playoff game in December, because, well, they haven't played December football games in Alabama. And I think that's really fascinating and interesting. Also kind of leads back to some of us have already gone to the artificial turf for this reason. However, if you're Alabama, you're thinking maybe you won't have to use this, but just in case, we want to be prepared for this. I love that Alabama be thinking like this because Alabama really is the economy in the state of Alabama. Everybody understands Alabama football does good. Everybody else does good. Everybody on the program. You understand what I'm saying? All right. This also means that we're going to see this $8 billion at work for the first time. ESPN paying $7.8 billion for the rights to the college football playoff. And that's huge money. And that money is already being earmarked for NCAA versus House. Now, some of y'all understand that the NCAA and the conferences have agreed to paying a $2.8 billion settlement in this case. As a part of it, we're going to get a fundamental change in the financial structure of college football, notably paying players. So I'm going to go through this, and I promise I'm going to explain all of it as clearly as I can and tell you what we don't know and what we're still trying to figure out. So in just over a year, about 14-month time, college football players will be revenue sharing with universities and conferences. Universities will be allowed to pay their own rosters and fundraise for a salary pool to pay those rosters and negotiate with agents. I believe that's what the children call cap. There's no lies in there. That's happening. That is on its way. Okay. But just because the schools can pay their rosters doesn't mean they actually want to pay their rosters, at least directly, right? We've seen NIL collectives fill in this gap, right? With name, image, and likeness becoming part and parcel to the sport. And the legal liability that you get to transfer to those name, image, and likeness collectives is also important to note here. Think about Jaden Rashada suing Billy Napier and an NIL collective that no longer exists for $110 million, right? You want to give yourself a little bit of distance between yourself and that money being exchanged because, well, they need to be employees. We'll get to that. But this is also a moment for the collectives to grow up, and they have been, right? They've gone from booster club meetings at somebody's Cub Scout den into bona fide marketing agencies, right? Missouri is a great example of this. Ole Miss is a great example of this. But what this also means is that the collective association is going to have a little bit more sway here. The collective association is made up of 35 power conference schools, collectives who are doling out big money, right? 35 of them have accounted for more than 200 million paid out. That's a lot of money, right? But even in there, it's really difficult to find players that are making seven figures, right? I mean, I don't even think we're in the double digits for players that are making seven figures in one NIL deal from one school, right? That means that you got a lot of mouths to feed and you got a lot of people with their hands out. And not everybody in the athletic department has time to run this stuff down. And there are people that are making money as agents and as go-betweens facilitating these deals. But one other reason that this is important is collectives present, at least inside of the House versus NCAA, a workaround for Title IX. I'm going to get to this. Now, the workaround in the lawsuit is not a workaround for the Department of Justice, okay? Title IX is remarkably tight, and it doesn't care about fair market. It only cares about discrimination. This is the reason why it's going to be difficult to pay a football player more than, say, a women's basketball player. Now, the natural question to ask on this is, how come we can pay a football coach more than we pay a women's basketball coach? And the answer is quite clear. They are employees of the university, okay? This is not something that universities want for their players. They do not want to employ them. They don't want to hand out 1099s, and they sure as hell don't want to hand out W-2s, because then they are legally liable for all the things that go with employing these kids as workers. Start with workers' comp and then work back. You know what I'm saying? Then go to healthcare. My God, dog. I'm 36 years old. You know how I know I'm big time? When I can afford healthcare and I own a house, right? Cars paid for, bikes paid for. Healthcare, that's the thing. That's what I would be pulling for if I was in the CBA negotiations. That probably won't ever happen because the conferences don't want to have employees and the universities don't want to have employees. Now, as a part of all of this, this being the House versus the NCAA settlement, we're going to see rosters capped. And we're also going to see the amount of money you can pay on rosters capped to try to create something like competitive advantage. I think this is interesting because you're capping it at $22 million. Sounds like a lot of money, but anybody that looks at an NBA contract will tell you, nah, not really. Anybody that looks at an NFL contract will be like, nah, that's like 1 year Aaron Rodgers, maybe. No, not anymore, because Aaron Rodgers making $50 million a year. Now I'm thinking about it. My good, half of Aaron Rodgers, not even half of Aaron. You know what? It's his good ankle. You be paying for his good ankle, right? That's going to make it really interesting because I'm sure that there are agents for these players that are like, hey, you're going to have to take a big whack of that and pay it to my starting quarterback over here. While also we got to come up with other ways to pay these guys outside of the structure. And that's where the NIL collectives also are going to work as a service because they are third parties who are indirectly affiliated with the universities. You can raise other kinds of money to pay those rosters. So I don't think these rosters are going to stay at $22 million. I think that's just going to be what the universities can choose to pay out through the NIL collectives, or dare I say it, employ these kids as they would a college football coach or women's basketball coach. Now, again, Title IX, not subject to any of that. And we have Title IX lawyers that are waiting for this to go through so they can sue. Okay? Now, Oregon's already in one. They haven't wanted to settle. I expect that they'll want to settle. And I think that is going to be the modus operandi for most of these universities. They're going to admit that they have done something wrong and settle for an undisclosed amount of money until such a time as that money gets to be too damn high. The price of paying out those settlements becomes too damn high, and you got to come up with some other way to kick the can down the road. It's also kind of, I think, interesting because Greg Sanki is operating under what I think is a fool's thought that students have never told me they want to pay taxes. Hey, dog, it's America. Ain't nobody want to pay taxes. Stay woke, dog. Nobody want to pay taxes. Dog, I pay 31% in taxes. You think I want to do that? Nah, but I'm here and I live here and I'm a citizen. Okay? All right? Kids ain't scared of paying taxes. You know what that's called? It's called getting you an accountant, right? You work all that out. Okay? Rich people do it all the time. There's all sorts of ways to pay your taxes. Okay? What I think is also important about Sanki saying that, students don't want to pay taxes is students are no longer just students. They've never been just students, right? Even when we didn't have the NCAA, we're always paying people. Now we're paying people above the table, which means that the revenue man can come down and bust up your still if he wants to. You don't want the revenue man to give you any reason to have to feel like you got to close down your business. So you want to have it above board. So you have it above board. You pay the tax man. You keep going on about your business, right? That's going to work, I think, for the players. I also think that there's a lot of grown men who genuinely believe that they know something that the kids don't know. And while I'm willing to admit there are lots of stupid 17 and 18-year-olds, there are also lots of smart ones, and they talk to each other. The same dude that be in the dorm room hustling a haircut is also the same dude who can tell them how to invest their money. Okay? All right? And it ain't your job to be telling people what to do with their money. And it ain't your job to protect them from financial risk. That's called being an adult. You know what I'm saying? This is America. If you want to be stupid with your money, that's your business. Let these kids go do what they go do with their money. Okay? That's what happens when you start making some. People start trying to come up with ways to take it back from you. All right. On all of this, Greg Sanki, and I keep saying Greg Sanki because he's the one talking, would love to see the United States Congress step in with some legislation to really regulate the industry, especially paying the players. I bet you would, Panama Red. I bet you would. You know what? I would like Bill Gates to give me some of that money to pay off all these student loans that I got. You know what I'm saying? I would love that. Who wouldn't love a bailout? You know what I'm saying? Wall Street love a bailout. And you know what? These billion-dollar conferences would love a bailout too. But I'm going to tell you something. First, another fool's thought is believing you can get the U.S. Congress to pull in one direction on this. They might be able to pull in one direction on one or two things, right? But this, nah, dog. Number two on that is ain't nobody trying to be the face of the person bringing down Title IX. You're just not, that's not a good look for anybody. You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure it's fair. And not for nothing, but there are some players that I think would also be for Title IX staying as it is because we all love our Olympic sports. Olympic sports also lose $40 million, generally speaking, among Power 5 schools. So you're going to have to come up with another way because Congress is not interested in helping you out, Greg Sanki. They're interested in being reelected because I don't know if you know, but this is 2024. And we got a presidential election on its way. Ain't nobody thinking about what to do with your billions of dollars. You're going to have to find a way to pay these children what you owe them. You know what I'm saying? Over here, like Riley Freeman, pay what you owe, you know? Game, recognized game, and you looking kind of unfamiliar when you talking about kids don't want to pay taxes. Dog, I've been paying taxes since I was 13 years old. You know what I'm saying? I'm over here at Reasers, putting groceries in the bag. Where the title work? Paying taxes. So all of that is on the offing, and that's what we know so far. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.